man holds a candle inside an open wooden cabinet so the whole Vienna court can see. Nothing in there but brass gears. He shuts the doors. The carved wooden man reaches out and takes a chess piece. Then he beats one of the finest players in the room. The year is 1770 and the Empress Maria Theresa is watching. On top of the cabinet, a chessboard. Behind the board, a life-sized man carved from wood, dressed in a fur-trimmed Ottoman robe and a turban, his painted eyes fixed and unblinking. You are looking at a machine that thinks. That is what the court believes. That is what most of Europe will believe for the better part of a century. And every single person who believes it is wrong, in a way that is far stranger than a thinking machine would have been. The inventor is Wolfgang von Kempelen. He is not an entertainer. He is a Hungarian engineer and a royal advisor, a serious man with a serious job, and he built this thing almost on a dare. He had watched a magician perform for the Empress and told her, more or less, that he could do better. She gave him leave to try. He disappeared for 6 months. He came back with the Turk. Here is the first thing to understand. The reveal at the start of every performance, the opening of the doors, the candle held to the gears, was not a courtesy. It was the trick. Kempelen understood something about you that most liars never figure out. The best way to hide a thing is to show people an empty box, and let them decide for themselves that it is empty, because the box was not empty. Folded inside that cabinet, behind a sliding partition and a false bank of machinery, sat a human being. A living, breathing chess master, knees pulled to his chest, working by candlelight. When Kempelen opened the left door to show the gears, the operator slid to the right. When he opened the right, the operator slid back to the left. The audience saw two halves, both apparently full of clockwork, and never once saw them at the same time. They watched the box get emptied in front of their eyes. They just watched it in pieces. The operator inside could not see the board above him. He did not need to. Kempelen had lined the underside of the real chessboard with small magnets. Each chess piece had a magnet in its base. When a piece moved on the board above, a corresponding metal disc moved on a grid inside the cabinet, dragged along by the magnet. The hidden player watched the discs. He knew exactly where every piece stood. He reached up, gripped a lever that ran to the Turk's wooden arm, and steered the hand like a puppet. And this is where the machine stops being a magic trick and starts being something about you. Think about what the crowd actually saw. They saw wood. They saw metal. They saw a candle prove the cabinet was full of gears. Their eyes gave them true information, every piece of it, and they still assembled it into a lie. Not because they were stupid. Because Kempelen had handed them a story that was more satisfying than the truth, and the human mind will almost always take the better story. That is the real engine inside the Turk, not the magnets. For decades, people tried to catch it. In 1783, in Paris, the Turk played and the crowds packed in. Somewhere in that period it faced Benjamin Franklin across the board. Later, the story goes it played Napoleon Bonaparte, who is said to have tried to cheat mid-game to see what the machine would do. The Turk, the account claims, swept the pieces off the board in response. Whether every detail of that is true or polished by retelling almost does not matter. The point is that heads of state, scientists, and the sharpest minds of the age sat down against a wooden man and lost, and walked away arguing about how the clockwork could possibly be so clever. They were asking the wrong question. The clockwork was never clever. It was scenery. After Kempelen died, a showman named Johann Nepomuk Milzel bought the Turk in 1804 and took it on the road. Milzel was a promoter to his bones, and he understood the act was worth more than the machine. He toured it through Europe and, in 1826, across the Atlantic to America. He hired chess masters to fold themselves into the cabinet city by city. One of them, a strong player named William Schlumberger, became the Turk's hidden mind for years, climbing into that box night after night, winning games no one knew he was playing, taking bows he was never allowed to be seen for. Sit with that for a second. Somewhere in the crowd, a great player is being applauded, and he is a piece of furniture. The applause is real. The genius is real. And it is pointed at a lump of painted wood, while the actual human being crouches in the dark underneath it, sweating, silent, unpaid in glory. There were people who guessed. There always are. A few writers and engineers argued loudly that a man had to be inside. One of them, an English engineer named Robert Willis, published a careful pamphlet in 1821 laying out almost exactly how the illusion worked, the sliding operator and all. He was essentially right, and it barely mattered. The crowds kept coming, kept paying, kept choosing the wonderful explanation over the correct one, because being right is not the same as being believed, and a good illusion does not die when it is exposed. It dies when people stop wanting it. The Turk kept touring. Miguelzel and Schlumberger both died on the road, Schlumberger of yellow fever, and the machine passed through more hands and grew quiet. In 1854 in Philadelphia, a fire tore through the building where it was being stored. The Turk burned. A witness said that as the flames reached it, they heard the wooden figure's voice box, "It's one small clockwork trick," cry out from inside the fire before it was gone. 84 years of secrets turned to ash in an afternoon. For all that time, from that first candlelit reveal in front of Maria Theresa to the fire in Philadelphia, the smartest people alive kept staring into an empty cabinet and filling it with a mind that was not there. They had every piece of evidence they needed. The doors opened. The gears were visible. A man crouched inches away. Now think about the last time a machine gave you an answer and you simply believed it. A voice that sounds certain. A screen that responds instantly. A box that seems to know. You do not open the doors. You do not check for the person folded inside, or the crank behind the confidence. You see the smooth surface and you fill in the mind, exactly the way that Vienna court did, because a thinking machine is a better story than a hidden hand, and the better story is the one your brain reaches for first. The Turk was never a machine that could think. It was a machine that proved you would rather it could. And the man in the cabinet is still there, in almost every clever box you trust today. You just never open the door to look.